Hi, everybody. Welcome back to VA3FUC. My name here is Ron. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today, I got a special presentation for you. I have Adrian VE7NZ came to our club via Zoom, of course, and talked to us about AllStar and the Canadian Hub. Already been clarified. They're okay with us taping this, so I was able to show it to you guys. I want you guys to watch this because this does talk a lot about what's going on in the spectrum that we have noticed, and it's starting to get a little scary out there, and what their project is and what they're trying to do. And I really have to give them props for what they're doing because it is an interesting idea, and I think everyone should get involved in this. This is something that every club should really think about if they are experiencing the same problems that we are. If you're a part of a club, you might want to make sure that they see this video and reach out to this guy. The guy has a lot of knowledge, and I can't wait to get him on again. Maybe we can do like a Q&A on AllStar, and maybe we'll go into another presentation that he has available that he's done. I'll have to reach out to him. But if you want to see that stuff, and I do mean you, the viewers out there, message down below. Click on the subscribe button, ring that bell for notifications if you haven't already, and enjoy the show. And I look forward to your comments.
Yeah, my daytime job, I work for a company based out of Sweden, but my division's headquartered out of Calgary, and we have a receiving stations monitoring the ionosphere all over the globe, spaced about every 250 kilometers all over Europe and North America and China and so on. And we monitor the ionosphere for changes in propagation at L-band, and we use that to improve the performance of GPS, so that self-driving cars and things like this can get down to a few centimeters of accuracy instead of many meters, so they can stay in the right lane. So it's kind of a cool thing because it very much ties into HF propagation and all that. Anyway, enough about that. That's another presentation for another day. I can do one on GPS one day for you guys. Okay, so introduction to AllStar and the Canada Hub. So we'll cover, as I said, what it is, how you use it for networking, which is what most people are familiar with, but also how you can use it as a repeater controller. We'll talk about the Canada Hub project. We'll talk about how much this all costs, which is anywhere from zero to a very small amount of money. The zero part's great. We can all start tonight if you want. I'll explain that. FAQs and that I typically get, and then if I haven't answered the questions, then...
Recording in progress.
Aha, good. Glad we're recording. Good, and then your questions. So perfect. So since we started the recording, I'll just say I'm Adrian, VE7 November Zulu, and if anybody has questions watching the recording after you read this, feel free to drop me an email at ve7nz@rac.ca. I'm always happy to help with people who are trying to get their systems up and running. General questions, what have you. Okay, what is AllStar and how does it work? AllStar is actually a ham adaptation of some software that was written for PBXs, for phone systems, voice over IP phone systems, and the software is called Asterisk. And it was actually written in 1999. And it's interesting because when you start using this as an administrator, like I do, you find that there's a lot of the configuration files. Basically, it looks like a telephone system. It talks about extensions, and it talks about call waiting and forwarding calls and all this stuff. And we've adapted all of these lines of code to work in terms of radios. So how have we done that? Well, first of all, we refer to what are known as nodes, and a node is basically typically a repeater or another device that's connected to the system via the internet. I mentioned that AllStar can be used. The software can be used to control repeaters as well as network, and I'll explain some examples of that. It has great voice quality. It also is full mesh networking. I'll spend quite a bit of time in the early slides explaining what that means and how it looks in a practical way. It's also very easy to manage remotely. You can set up a node, as you'll see, at a remote repeater site, for example, and be able to connect into it and make changes to your repeater remotely. You can make connections using standard DTMF touch tones on your mic or your radio, as well as from an internet control system. And I mentioned it's easy to do this for free because, yes, there are free applications that can run on phones and laptops and other devices. And if you don't consider that real ham radio, then don't do it. But I'll explain why that's kind of a nice thing to have as an option. You notice in the bottom right here, I've given some examples of nodes connected. There's over 6,000 nodes on AllStar. It's really, really taken off. I'll also talk about how that compares to, say, IRLP and Echolink, which what a lot of people ask. So what is the equipment you need for this? If you're hooking up a repeater, you need a Raspberry Pi, and you need an interface board. These Raspberry Pis are a little bit more than this now because of the supply chain shortage, but normally you can buy them out of Toronto for $130 ready to go. Okay, connecting that Raspberry Pi, you can take a USB cable, connect it to this interface board or one like it, and that board has connections for audio inputs and outputs and press to talk and carrier operated switch and all that stuff, the normal 4 connections that go in and out of any repeater to control a radio. So very simple to hook up, adjust levels, away you go. There's also these units that you can plug in, and there's a variety of them, but I've shown one called Sherry, S-H-A-R-I, which is very popular and probably the least expensive one. It's about $90 US, and it's a complete UHF or VHF, but I recommend UHF. UHF transceiver, half watt, that can plug into the Raspberry Pi via the USB ports, and suddenly you've got a node. You've got a way to get into the system using radio, like as if you've got a home repeater around your house, good for half a kilometer kind of thing. Okay. There's different types of nodes. The main two are, well, I guess regular nodes. There's not really a name for them. And then there's what we call hubs or hub nodes. Really, the only difference with a hub node is it is a node without a radio connected to it. So it's kind of a place for everybody to meet, like a conference server. Think of it like we're doing right now on Zoom. The hub node is the node that people connect to, and then everybody that's connected that can hear each other. You may be familiar with this on IRLP. They're called reflectors, or on Echolink, they're called conference servers. Same idea. Okay, there's a few popular ones. Among them are the East Coast Reflector in the US, Freestar, a network that we helped build with some folks in the UK a couple of years ago, and the Canada Hub, which is, of course, my one that I want to talk about, and we'll explain that later. But yes, there's these hubs. These hubs can also provide gateways to different places, or different technologies. I heard you saying that, oh gosh, I'm sorry, I forget your name right now, but the first was that contacted me, that you're into all these different modes, DMR, Fusion, all this stuff. Cool. A lot of people have provided interfaces into AllStar for those different types of modes. Echolink is dead easy because it's actually capable. It's built into the software. You just put a username and password in for the node, and now everybody can access it via Echolink. So VE7NZ on Echolink comes into the Canada Hub. IRLP can also be made available if you do some clever stuff, which we've done on the Canada Hub. And of course, there's systems like Freestar UK, which I think have possibly every single digital mode I can think of. DMR, D-Star, NXDN, P25, Fusion, WiresX, all this stuff. They got it all. Those guys know what they're doing. Okay, that's hubs. Let me just take a step back now and go back to sort of how does this work? How do you connect from where you are to another node? Okay, let's say your repeater is available, or you've got one is connected to AllStar, or you've got one of these micronodes. So let's start with the repeater example. Let's say we're at VE3 AAA, just made it up, right? It's on 2 meters. Now your club has a 440 repeater. You want to join them. Well, we used to do that typically by putting all the equipment at the same site and interconnecting via cables and whatever. But now they could be at 2 completely different sites and connected via AllStar. You could then have a club member with one of those Sherry nodes, a little home half watt UHF system, and VA3XX. He decides he's going to connect in on Simplex with his radio and connect and dial up VE3 AAA. And now he's part of the network. Okay, VE3 YYY, she's in Hawaii. Didn't bring any radio equipment, but there is an app you can use on your iPhone, and also Android, by the way, and use that app, and now you connect to, she's connected into VE3 AAA, and now she's part of the network. Everybody here can hear everybody. It's all connected. That's what full mesh means, is every node can connect to, any node, and every node will hear every node. So what does that mean? Here's another example. Let's say your club has 3 repeaters that you want to connect together. Here they are. It doesn't make any difference whether you're on the UHF repeater, the 2 meter, or the 440. They're all connected. Everybody hears everybody. Still got the simplex node connecting in, and we've still got this lady in Hawaii who's now decided to connect into the 220 machine for whatever reason. Really doesn't matter though, because everybody hears everybody. She can connect to any of these bubbles and be part of the network. So you can imagine with full mesh, things start to grow. Here's an example of actually what is going on right now, pretty much. We have a hub in British Columbia where we have a lot of repeaters in BC connected to. Maybe there's, I think 20 or so connected full time. Here's an example, one of them, V7NFR on 440. Where's my little pointer thing here? Hang on, I don't think you're seeing my pointer. Well, maybe you are. Maybe you're seeing my mouse. Anyway, I'll just talk. That's fine. So if you're not seeing my mouse, that's fine. V7NFR. Okay, on the left here, I've got a simplex node connected into that repeater. Scott, VA7SL, is in his summer place. He's using his iPhone. He's connected into that repeater, but that's connected into the BC hub. The BC hub is connected to the Canada hub, as well as the Manitoba hub, a bunch of other repeaters overseas. All those nodes we talked about in the club in Ontario connected in over here in the Canada hub, all the other provinces. Basically, you've got a big network. And anybody that talks to anybody, anybody that talks on this network will be heard by everybody else. And you're probably thinking, boy, this must be really chaotic and it must be full of problems. It isn't. I'll explain why in a bit, but it runs really well and really quietly and really nicely. And it's not that busy, frankly. Okay. How do you make the connections? The default code, you can change it if you want to stop people playing around, which can happen, is *3. So you just dial *3 on your repeater and followed by the node number you want to connect to, and then you're connected. So the node number for the Canada hub is 517300. *3 517300, you're connected. When you're done, *10 will disconnect you. As I said, you can customize those codes if you want to. The other way is you can use your computer to connect the nodes. There's actually a control panel. Doesn't need to be as complicated as looking as this. This is actually my administrator screenshot. But the basic idea is you pick the node that you're on. See my repeater here at home, the 220 repeater. And I say, I want to connect it to 517300. I just put in the node and hit connect or disconnect or monitor or any of these things. So basically I'm doing it all now behind the scenes. It's kind of a nice thing. You can protect all of this with usernames and passwords. Only those that should have the capability. But it's a great way to visualize your network, and it's a great way to control things. And it doesn't require that beep, 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 beep going over the network and all that. It's a little more elegant way of doing things without DTMF. So that's just a web-based control panel. You just use your browser. Okay, let's talk about AlStar as a repeater controller. I've been putting in repeaters since the 80s, late 80s, with very expensive, every club system I put in, it was at least, $1,200 to $3,000 worth of controller hardware. Okay. It's still in that range. You can put in some of this stuff. It's amazingly unnecessarily expensive, I would say. But with AlStar, you can actually use it not just for networking, but to control your repeater. You can set audio levels, all sorts of audio processing. You can set, some audible tones, courtesy tones, timers, announcements, everything that I've seen that you can do with regular hardware, you can do with AlStar and more. So yeah, and you can also plug in devices like sensors and things. If you've got a remote site, you want to see how the batteries are doing and the solar panels and the sunshine levels and all that kind of cool stuff. How do you do this? Okay, I mentioned there's 4 classic inputs and outputs to a repeater. Audio out and in, press to talk, and the COS. So this COS, for those of you who don't realize, is carrier RPD switch. That means it just lets somebody know that the repeater is receiving a signal. PTT transmits, keys up the transmitter from the internet. So you have those 4 standard interfaces. You have a radio interface board, a Raspberry Pi running the AlStar software. Whoops, click the button. Okay, and then you get over to the internet, and away you go. With shipping and taxes, notwithstanding the fact that Raspberry Pis are a little short supply right now, but normally you're looking at $200, $250 Canadian, everything to your door, installed, good to go. I've shown the different components here. Maybe you need to make up a cable. The interface boards are 40 to 70 US. Raspberry Pi, 120, 130 bucks, something like that. One of the things you can do with this is you can put the Raspberry Pi to a remote site. If you've got a data link to a remote site, you can control everything now, all that stuff I discussed, without going to site. I remember in BC here, there's two things that hold us up from getting to a repeater site. The weather. So some of our sites are only accessible for 2 months of the year because they're way up in the mountains and it's just too dangerous, too snowy. Secondly, getting access to sites. A lot of us have like equipment at CBC sites. Yeah, our equipment's there, and we're really grateful to CBC. But by the time you want to go there and you just want to change one thing, you want to change, an announcement or an ID or an audio level a little bit, something like that, and you've got to get permission and get response, and somebody has to accompany you, and all this rigmarole. You might be 3 months before you actually get to the site, just to do something very simple. Whereas if you've got a Raspberry Pi there, control your repeater and a data link, away you go. And they are great data link products now. Arden, HamWAN, we have something called BC Warn out here. These all run on anywhere from 2.4 to 10 gigs in the ham bands. Very cool stuff for remotely managing your system. Okay. Another approach, if you've got a remote repeater site, is the classic way that we typically used to in the 90s, get our signals from the repeaters down to the ground, down to the link radio or whatever, is via a VHF repeater with a UHF link or something like that. So you can do that as well. You can put the Pi down in town and basically at the end of the link radio and control the link radio. Now you can't control the repeater that way, but you can still do the networking part. You can still connect into AllStar and make it available to your users. Okay, so I've kind of covered how AllStar works and what you can use it for. I'll talk about the Canada Hub project. A little snapshot of my rack in the house here, where I've got a number of the nodes running, each on their own Raspberry Pi for basically if something fails, we don't lose the whole system kind of idea. Okay, well, how did this start? If you scan around the bands, and it doesn't matter where I go, even in Los Angeles, frankly, it doesn't matter where I go. I find it's very quiet out there on these bands. And I'm thinking to myself, gosh, usually what you hear is the time ID. It's usually wrong. You hear the weekly net, and then the rest of the time the repeaters are dormant. This is not good. We've put time and effort into that, lots of club resources, and yet it sits there silent. Hams are getting discouraged. They get their license, they get excited, they buy themselves a Baofeng or something, and they get on the air, but there's nobody to talk to. And so it's a bit discouraging. And some people want to go to their club executives and say, hey, why don't we do this AllStar thing? But frankly, a lot of clubs think about this way more than they should. I think, they debate these things like it's some major decision. It's not really. It's inexpensive and you can try it. It's just fun. And if it doesn't work out, don't do it. It's not a big investment. But some people have very bureaucratic club executives in their clubs. And so they simply say, I don't really want to go through having to lobby for something as simple as this. I'm just going to buy myself a sharing node and get on the network. And good for them. But the downside to that is the club suffers, right? The club doesn't get the activity it could have if they adopt it. The other thing is, if we're not using our repeaters, we really are at risk of losing our spectrum. And I know it sounds silly, but it has been happening. It has happened on some bands, and it could happen again. If we don't use it, we could lose it. So the Canada Hub was partly done to address this problem, to get activity going, but it was done with a very Canadian flair in mind. I was part of a group called the Interprovincial Amateur Radio Network, or IPARN, back in the late 80s. We built a nationwide network on the Anik satellite. The problem was, and it was all funded through membership, so the problem was an Earth station at cost was $25,000. So we put one in at Toronto, one in at Vancouver, one in at St. John's, and so on. And we built this network that was pretty good, but it was really expensive to run and maintain and pay for the satellite time and so on. And it was when I was realizing, gosh, I've replaced my controller on my 220 repeater using AllStar. These Pis are dirt cheap. Why don't I build the national network that I had with IPARN and build a Canadian network with some identity? So that's what the Canada Hub is. It's really there are other hubs, but they're big and they're maybe American or British or Australian, whatever, and that's great. Nothing against those. But I thought it'd be really nice to build one that had a Canadian kind of focus as the primary reason for being so that we can, tease each other about hockey scores and talk about the snow and whatever we like to do, right? All the good stuff. So it's a place for Canadian hams to connect. We can chat, share ideas, carry on nets, and so on. We have repeaters on the network now connecting full time, and others that connect when wanted or on a scheduled basis for certain nets. And they're all the way from St. John's to Vancouver Island to Whitehorse and Yellowknife. We're trying to fill in as much of the country as we can. And it's been going about just over 2 years, and we're making good progress. I mentioned it's Canadian, kind of a Canadian focus, but we love having international visitors. What we declined to do is be part of every US net or international net and so on, because it just feels like if we do that, then we start just becoming more and more of that, as opposed, or we become a subsidiary, if you will, of a US, just because there's so many US hams relative to us, you just become a kind of a small piece of that. We want to try to keep the Canadian focus, but that's not to say we don't welcome people from other places to come in and join us and say hello. The main network is based on AllStar. We do have access via RLP, Echolink, and other the various phone clients, as well as things like Ham Shack Hotline. Of course, that all has to be done for licensed operators only, and I manage that quite effectively. If anybody wants to get on the system, just send me your call sign, and I'll send you the username and password to get on. If we have a problem, we can change it in 5 seconds. But we haven't had any problems. It's been good so far. We're not part of a club. I am not looking for money. Everything done here has been donated by three of us that decided we've been in this hobby for 40-something years, and we had a lot of extra equipment kicking around. We put about 11 repeaters on the air in the Vancouver area. We just decided let's just get back to the hobby and do this. So we're just looking for people to join in the fun. Because we're not a club, we don't have any meetings, we don't have any policies, any of that kind of stuff. We just ask people to be respectful and friendly. Okay. A little bit of the Canada Hub architecture. It's actually multiple nodes that form the hub. So it's really 4 different hubs connected, as you can see here. We generally ask people west of Manitoba West and North to connect to the Western hub. People in the East to connect to the Eastern hub. International can do whatever they want. That helps balance the load a little bit. We manage Echolink and all those non-radio type clients. All the phone and laptop ones can connect on this particular hub 302, and 303 is our gateway into RLP. And we do this partly for, as I mentioned, if we lose one hub due to a whatever component failure, the whole network doesn't go down, just that component. Or if we have a technical issue with one particular part of the network, we can take care of it. It's also geographically diverse. The East hub's a different physical location with different internet, so that we have some redundancy if there's an outage. Most of this equipment sitting at my place, where I have very reliable internet and power, but also backup generators, and I'm working on backup internet via microwave. But the Eastern hub it's a different location, so the idea is, though we haven't designed it to be for emergencies, there should never be a case where it's not available somehow. Okay, I took a couple of screenshots off of the dashboard. If you go to our website, www.thecanadianhub.ca, there's a link at the top that says click here to see what's happening right now. That's basically this dashboard that you're seeing here. It's the same dashboard you can use to control the network if you have those admin privileges. But for users, it lets them see what's going on with the different hubs and unnecessary information, but it's all there. This gives you a bit of an idea of kind of connections. On the left here, this is I guess this was see, it's a bit of a mishmash. This is the Eastern hub, but there's still some Western sites connected in there. Yeah, different stuff here. The BC hub is in the top right. I think I took these screenshots back in January. Now we've got way more connected to the BC hub full time. But it gives you a bit of an idea. You can see you got Yellowknife and Newfoundland and everything in here. I mentioned it's full mesh. This is what we call a bubble chart. You can also access this from the dashboard. This is in our during our weekly Trans-Canada Net. We hold Sundays at 10 a.m. Pacific. And I did this for fun. I took a screenshot of the bubble chart once. We typically have about 200 nodes. So it's 200 individuals or repeaters connected. These are all the nodes. If you can't see, the details are too small to see. You could zoom in on the actual website. The point here is that, again, as I mentioned, everything's full mesh. So anybody connect it. If you connect to any one of these nodes, you're on the network with everybody else. And if anybody on any one of these nodes keys their mic and talks, everybody else gets to hear them. And you would think it would be chaos, but it isn't. And I'll explain. So how active is it? Well, that last screenshot was during a net. So it was a little bit of a, extreme case. Typically in the net, like I say, it's a couple hundred repeaters. But when the net's not on, typically it's probably in the neighborhood of 50 repeaters, something like that, or 50 nodes at any given time. And yet it's not that busy. You can sit there for 2 hours without hearing a single thing. And sometimes people get all excited. They go to this presentation and then they get their laptop set up with their phone or there's something, and get on the air. And they're like, well, I connected into it. There's nothing going on. How boring. Well, hang in there if that happens, because it does get busy. It just comes and goes in waves. And we're still young. It's still a couple of years old and we're building. The system is definitely getting more active. But my friends at the East Coast Reflector, gosh, I don't know how many repeaters they have. Something like 500 or whatever connected. And they complain that they can go a couple hours without a QSO with that many, just the way it is sometimes. I would say we average about a QSO an hour. Because of this, I tell people, don't worry about tying up the network. A lot of people come on, they're maybe a little bit self-conscious, and they're like, oh, I better let you go. I don't want to tie up the network. Well, if you've been talking for 2 hours, maybe, but, most people, I say never worry about tying up the network. We want activity. Invite other people to join your conversation, maybe, something like that. I mentioned we have some nets. This is a little bit out of date now, actually. So for the latest, go to the Canada Hub website. I just realized. So we have our Trans-Canada net. That one happens, yes. And we always have a question of the week. Today was about field day. Are you participating in field day? Or no, it was actually, what is your favorite field day memory if you have one? That was the question today. So that's always kind of a fun thing. We have a Monday. The Monday net's now actually called the All Hams Radio Net. It's a social net. We have another Monday net that's all about audio. I'm a musician, so I love this. It's all about sounds. It's called Sounds Good. It's out at 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a tech net on Tuesdays, which is great. It's not just ham technology, it's sometimes other topics. I gave a talk on autonomous vehicles, I think once. Yes, I did. And we get into all sorts of non-ham stuff as well as ham stuff. Thursday net, Triode net, that's from Prescott Russell Club up near Ottawa. Sometimes a little bit more technical. They'll throw in they'll sometimes do things like ask questions from the exam book, which makes us old hams embarrassed when we get the answers wrong. And on Saturdays, we have a net from the UK with our friends at Freestar who they interview famous hams. They'll get a YouTube celebrity or somebody that designed some popular, software or antennas. They can interview them, and it's really fun. And they'll take questions. And Saturday night, out of Toronto, we have the Science Net at 9 p.m. on Saturdays, which is not just ham science, but general science. So that's fun. Okay, questions. Typical things I hear. Oh gosh, if we do this, our repeater will be busy all the time. No, it won't be. It might be a little bit busier than it is now, which is probably good, but I wouldn't worry about it other than during the net. So we try to limit it to no more than one net a day on average. Sometimes we have a couple of short ones, but we still don't have nets running on, I think, no nets on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays. So it's not like at most you might hear typically a net a day. It runs for half an hour to an hour. And you'll hear a few QSOs, but it's not chaos. And you can always disconnect. You just say, I don't want to listen to this, disconnect. Will you lose control of your repeater if you join the network? No, you have control over everything. You can connect and disconnect. You can take the Raspberry Pi and throw it in the garbage if you want to, whatever you want to do. What if there's an emergencies? You can always disconnect and manage it. We sometimes get people that disconnect from the network for local events when they're doing, ham assistance in some sort of a parade, or we had a kayak race, I think in Cornwall the other week that they went off to take care of on their repeater, things like this. Actually, because of the redundant design, the power backup, and the fact that we cross so many time zones, if I'm in the mountains in British Columbia and I'm in trouble, there are lots of places here with no cell coverage. Much of the province has no cell coverage where you need it, where it's dangerous. And I'd be very happy to know that I can get on my radio and it's 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. and I can find somebody back east who'll be up and having breakfast and hear me and can get help. So I think from an emergency perspective, it's actually good to have these connections. Unlicensed users, I mentioned that everything's password protected. We've never had a problem. If we did, it's very easy to fix. Okay, chaos, stuck mics, interference, intentional interference, all these things can happen. We have a team of control operators from Newfoundland to Vancouver and one in the US, all keeping an eye on this network as much as they can. I would say it's pretty much monitored 24/7. That doesn't mean it's policed. We're not going to complain about anything that's legal and polite. We'll never complain about that. What we do though, is if we see a technical problem, like a stuck mic or somebody being difficult or whatever, the operator will just use the control panel that you saw and just disconnect that node. And sometimes, usually it's not anything intentional. Usually it's equipment going weird. Like we had a repeater day in Whitehorse acting up. So I just dropped them off the net. I'll send Charlie an email who runs it and say, hey, I noticed your repeater's getting some intermod issues. And then I offer to help. If they can take care of it, great. But if they're not sure what to do, I'll log in remotely from here and look at the Raspberry Pi and change the configuration for them, and away we go. I like to joke. Some people say, this isn't real ham radio. I'm like, whatever. You know, AM operators, when SSB came along, the AM operators said that about single sideband. So, I mean, whatever, right? It's just a different way of networking. I think as long as we're experimenting, communicating, getting to know each other, socializing, learning, all these things, I think it's great. And certainly for me and a lot of people on the network, it's been just that. There's been an awful lot of knowledge and experience gained through what we're doing here. Okay, for the Club Techies, do you need to replace your existing repeater controller? No. You can interface with it and use it. You don't have to replace it. You could replace it if you wanted, but you don't have to. You can just use it for networking and complement it. Do you need a lot of bandwidth? No. 100 kilobits per second per link is the max you will use. It's actually 87 plus some overhead, but yeah, 100 safe. Sites without internet can easily be connected using things like HamWAN or Arden, I misspelled Arden, I realized, other ham data links. What operating system does AlStar use? Arch Linux. Do you need to be a Linux expert? No. Most of the installation and management is done through menus, and the configuration files are in fairly plain English, and you just edit them. Like, it says things like repeater hang time equals, and then a number, right? Stuff like that. Pretty self-evident. There's two versions of the software you'll see. One is ASL or AllStar Link. Then there's HamVoIP. People ask, what's the difference? ASL is open source. If you're a programmer that wants to modify the core software and you want to contribute to the knowledge base, you can do it with ASL. You can recompile it, contribute back, all that classic open source stuff. HamVoIP isn't. It's based on the same source code. The person who looks after it, David, decided to package it in a way that would be a little bit more user-friendly for the ham community, a lot more menu-driven. What I can say is it's very well supported and it's very stable. And at high scale, which what we are, once you start connecting, over 70 nodes to your repeaters to a node, the ASL software falls apart and crashes. It's just not good at scaling it like that. Whereas HamVoIP does, it scales very well. So, but whatever, they're both good. Okay, where can you get help? There's great community forums online. Everybody's happy to help, and they're very friendly support too. There's no objection to newbie questions. And then I'm always happy to help. I'm, as much as my time will permit anyway, I'm happy to help you understand how to set up your node and teach you how to configure things and best practices and all that kind of stuff. And if you get really stuck, I'll happily connect in and make some changes and let you know what I did to fix things up. So kind of in closing, yes, let's bring new life to our country's repeaters. Counties repeaters. Oh boy, I need another typo. Didn't notice that. I've given this presentation probably 20 times now since January. I didn't realize. To our country's repeaters. We're asking clubs to consider adding their repeaters to network. I would love it if you guys had a repeater that you said, we'll take this one and we'll make it, or our repeater will make it full-time on the network. That would be great. But, if not, if you're able to connect once in a while, that'd be great too. And we can help as much as you want. You can always disconnect if you're not enjoying it. And, want to give it a try. So there's the website with a little bit more info and the live dashboard and all that kind of good stuff. And if you have any questions, you can reach me at v7nz@rac.ca. And hopefully now somebody doesn't say, sorry, you were disconnected after the first slide.
So, how is it? Did you enjoy it? Would you like to see more of Adrian? Like I said, you guys, you got to comment down below. Don't forget, comment, comment, comment. I do read them. I don't reply to all of them, but I do read them. And also, I want to see how the engagement is if you guys are interested in more of this type of stuff. And honestly, I think his presentation was amazing. I found it very informative. Yeah, I cut out the Q&A from our club only because it didn't have anything to do with this video. It was more of a conversational type Q&A. It was different. But I want to bring, if we can bring him back on the show, I would love to bring him back, maybe even do a live video where you guys can ask him questions and we can get answers and feedback back. We can do a whole bunch of interesting stuff here with this and go forward. So, guys, if you enjoyed his content, remember you can reach him. He's on QRZ also, and or you can leave your comments down below, and we'll do a Q&A episode. Maybe bring him on the show and have you guys ask questions. So, anyways, guys, thank you all so much for watching. Like I said, the channel's been doing well. We've been growing, even though I haven't much, and I do apologize. Like I said, this is a hobby channel. It's not my full time. My full time is dedicated to CMP, Canadian Maker Project. That is where I shine the most. But this is a hobby, and I want to bring the hobby into a new light, and I want you guys to come and enjoy the fun. Because let's face it, radio is just fun. It is a really fun hobby. Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching. Remember, hit the bell, hit the like. You know, you do all the actions. You guys know what to do. Anyways, catch you in the next one. Later.